I've got a question for you. Do you prefer less wires and poor performance out of your equipment? Or would you rather have more wires and better performance in your equipment? Welcome back to Pushing Technology to the Limit. Today I want to discuss about the differences between self-powered equipment and external powered equipment. Now today I've got in my hand a HDMI splitter, and I've got an HDMI splitter over here and two other hard drives I want to talk about today. So I'm talking about mainly, and this has anything to do with any self-powered equipment, but mainly I'm dealing with computer and audio and visual equipment. Now over the Christmas holiday, I bought a little HDMI splitter from eBay. And if you're wondering why did I buy this kind of a splitter over this one over here, so I have one here that has wires and all sorts of stuff. It has its own power supply, and you have to have your own input cable and then your own output cables. So if you're just starting out with your video equipment, like your first setup, and you're like, oh geez, this HDMI cable costs this much, and I need 3 of them instead of just one going to equipment A and then that's it. Now I gotta have one going from my source and the other two going to either TV A and TV B or some other video source. Now you're thinking, well, why don't I just do one of these? And that's what I did. Let me get a closer up shot here for you. So it has its own video cable right into the splitter itself. The one thing I never realized about this HDMI splitter is the fact that it was self-powered. Now when I bought it, it was basically because it had its own cable. I was like, sweet, I don't need to buy another cable. I'll just plug the 2 cables in I've got and I'll be all set. Wrong. It was a total nightmare. So what, if you're wondering what self-powered equipment is, so this is the difference between self-powered and external powered equipment, is the fact that this is self, which means that it's powered up by the output of your device, whether it's a DVR or it's a DVD player, you name it. A stereo system that has an HDMI output on it. And this one here is a external powered supply, so meaning that you got to plug your power in and your HDMI in, so you got to have a separate cable. Well, there's a difference between these 2 units here, this one and this one I'm hanging on to that has the power cable or the video cable already inside of it here. And the difference is that this one has its own power source, which means that you don't have to take power off your video equipment. Now this particular HDMI splitter is powered up by your output of your video device, wherever that may be. Well, like I've tried 2 different setups. So I ran this particular unit, I plugged it directly into my TV, so this end was going into the set, and then I had one in and one out here, and it didn't matter which way you had it. It was I could say bidirectional, because it could be, any one of these could be in or out, and then this could just be one going into your TV set or what have you. But big difference with this. And I'll tell you, a lot of the problems I had with this was way worse than my powered supply HDMI splitter. Now I've got tons of the external power supply HDMI splitters, and The one thing that was wrong with this is the fact that I've tried it on several different devices. Like, I have now, Sage TV is like a personal DVR where you can record TV shows right to your computer. It's too much to get into it, so it's basically like a DVR and media player all in one. So if you have music files, other video files that you either done personally on your camera or you recorded elsewhere on some other DVR that can accept that format, you can play it on your TV set without having to have that DVR running. You could just move the files over to your PC and you could watch it either locally on your computer or the TV set itself. It wouldn't matter because the software looks the same on the TV as it does on my PC. So anyways, I kind of got off track here about that Sage player, but basically that's what it is. It's just a miniature computerized DVR. So I tried it on Sage TV. It sort of worked. I tried it on my DVR for my antenna that I got from Amazon way back when. I got these off from eBay. And each device I tried it on, and I even tried it on my HDMI stereo system. And each time I tried it on whatever piece of equipment I was using it on, I had a different result. Why? I think it has something to do with the power system itself that's in your video device, because some video devices that I've used work better than others. And for an example, like my stereo system worked the best because it was 120 volts. Not the output of your video source, but the power supply was 120 volts. And that worked the best. But when I plugged it into my low power equipment, like my PVR, DVR, whatever you want to call it, Sage player, it sort of worked. And it just depended on, I've got 3 of these, so I tried all 3 of them on different equipment. And all 3 of them had a different sensitivity level. Now, what I mean by sensitivity, meaning that certain things work better than others on different equipment. And this type of a self-powered HDMI splitter is not worth it. It was more of a headache. And one of the things that, I mean, yes, this is good if you want to run, say, like, both TVs right at once. That's perfect. Or whatever video device you have connected to this splitter. But the thing that I found with the problem is that your TV, TV 1 and TV 2 had to both be on, and they all had to be on HDMI 1. So whatever, whether it's whatever it says on your particular TV for your HDMI, it had to be, both sets had to be on 1 for this to actually work, which was ridiculous. So if I turned off my one TV, so like I shut off TV 2 because I'm not in that room that much. I'm mainly in the living room, so to say. If I'm not washing dishes and I don't want to watch, TV at that time, or I'm done doing dishes and I turn off the TV, well, the living room TV would stop working. And it was a pain. The other thing is that I found with the TV sets, and it's not the TV's fault. It doesn't matter what brand TV you've got. You can have any brand you want. I don't care. If it was not on the correct inputs on the TV set 1 and TV set 2, it just wouldn't work. I mean, there's just no way you could get it to work. The only way that I could get it to work is to physically unplug the one connection that I wasn't using, whether it's left or right. That was the only way that I could get the other set to work, is by unplugging one. Now that's ridiculous. Now if I come over here to this particular HDMI splitter, I've never had any quirks with this, and any external powered HDMI splitter I've had no problem. The only glitches that I've had in these particular units, and it's not the unit itself, I don't know what it is. So if your TV set 1 is running, TV set 2 is not, and you turn TV set 2 on, the TV set 1 will blink and it depends on what your setup is. Well, if you got some fancy smashy setup like me, it would say TX not found or searching for TX. But normally you folks are just going to have your HDMI from here plugged into your set. Me, I got a totally different setup, so I'm probably totally different, but the fact is that there's a little blink on TV set 1. Now, you wouldn't really notice it on your if you're turning TV set 2 on, like in your kitchen or wherever you have set 2, you wouldn't notice it in your living room. So and the other thing with this particular equipment is that I've had no issues with the fact as if TV set 2 is on HDMI 2, TV set 1 will work perfectly fine. On whatever channel the other one's on, it doesn't care. So there's a circuit board in here. It's not just a couple of soldered wires like that other unit was, wherever this thing's. Here it is. So basically what they did is they just soldered 2 HDMI connectors to the one cable here. And that's how they made it work. I don't have to take it apart to know what they did, because I've done my own wiring in the past with Y connectors. So that's the thing with these powered external powered splitters, is that they're more reliable than the self-powered device. So let's move on to a computer device. I've got 3 devices here. I've got a flash stick, which is self-powered. I mean, there's no way to other power it but by the USB port. I've got a hard drive that is self-powered. There's absolutely no other connections around this unit except for the USB cable. So that means that it's self-powered. Now you're going to say, well, Jesus, well, I don't know if it has, it doesn't say what the, but I'll just tell you, it's a 160 gigabyte hard drive. I use this for transferring from my laptop to my PC, because my laptop, I didn't really, when I came home with my laptop, I just unzipped the hard drive from my case and just plugged it in my computer, so I didn't have to plug in my laptop computer to take the files off that I've already had on the drive, because I pulled it off onto this USB drive here. And this one's not as good, and I'll explain why. And I have this other big honkin', this is one that is a customized one. It's not a name brand or anything. You can buy these on eBay, Amazon, wherever. You can put your own hard drive into them. So this one is pretty good, and it has its own. It has its own cable that it comes with. I don't have it connected, but it also has its power supply port, and it has its own power supply. So, what are the advantages and disadvantages to this particular self-powered hard drive here? A lot. When I first started buying self-powered stuff, I never realized that there was a big drawback, especially to computer equipment. But I realized that, and just like buying this HDMI splitter that's here on my table, the one that's self-powered, is that there's a price difference, but also there's a cost to the price difference. It was like, that one was like $10, and then this other one over here that I was showing you that had a power supply, well, it was about $30 for that. But this other one is the one that has a power supply that you have to plug into 120 volts, is more reliable. And it's the same way with the hard drives. So this one comes with, well, I took the cable off, but the original cable came with two USB plugs. So there was like a kind of a Y thing in the back here, and then it had one here and one there. Well, come to find out that some of the computer equipment that I have, it worked fine on my laptop with just this one cable. But I found out for some reason, and I don't understand it, but there are some computers that don't have enough power or something in its USB port to actually supply this properly on one cable. Now, I did find a lot of issues with a self-powered hard drive versus a external powered hard drive. Now, what is that, you ask? So, there again, this self-powered hard drive is powered up by the computer, by the USB port. There's a 5 volts circuit in the USB port, and it has to take electricity from the power supply of the computer. Now, if your computer's power supply is not big enough to handle a self-powered hard drive, it ain't gonna work. And a lot of my older computers had a very small power supply, as well as a small hard drive capacity. So it just wouldn't punt. I actually had to hog up another USB port to get this thing to work. And it was unreliable. And even still, I was able to, you could hear the thing go, and when it wasn't working right, you could hear it go, tick, 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 tick. It wouldn't even spit up. And yes, like I said, this is an older hard drive, but still, I've seen other self-powered equipment, tested other self-powered equipment, a lot newer than this, and still had the same issues. So if you don't have a sufficient enough power in your computer to power this, whether it's a tower or a laptop, you'll need another jack. And this, like I said, this one came with another jack, but the transfer speeds were slow. It was horribly slow on my laptop. But it did work. But it took so much longer. And I didn't really compare, times or anything like that, because I just had this for portability, just to get it going. But I do know that this hard drive is so much faster. I can transfer large files super fast. Now, I'm not saying super fast, but there's a big difference in this hard drive, not just because of the hard drive and the speed of the drive, but because it has its own power supply. It has to have something plugged into here, a 12 volt DC power supply. So this one is more reliable, it's faster, and yes, you're going to say, well, USB isn't as fast as internal. Well, yeah, of course, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that the self-powered hard drives are even slower than the actual powered up external power supply. So when I'm asking you, what do you want to have on your equipment? Do you want to have, self-powered and unreliability in your equipment, or do you want reliability and more wires? Me, I prefer to have more wires. This stuff could drive you nuts. Now, the only thing that I've found that actually works on all computers is this little flash drive. Now, I'm not just talking about this flash drive, but I've had all sorts of flash drives, and they just work because there's nothing to them. What is there to power up on this thing except just a little circuit board that goes through this entire plastic little box? I'm not sure if you can see it that far away or not, but that's my flash stick, and it's a 16 gigabyte. So when you are getting ready to buy something and you're saying, well, this or that, has this, I don't have to have a power supply, this and that. Well, you may or may not be able to have it work properly. And especially if you are a HD enthusiast where everything's got to be perfect. The sound's perfect, the video's perfect. And if there's one pixel on your set, you're like, what the hell is going on my TV? I mean, I know some people that absolutely have to have the perfect picture on their HD TV. And they go nuts if there's a pixel, even 2 pixels on their TV. To me, I don't care. I'm not that much of an enthusiast. I like a good picture, but if I don't have a good picture, now if it's an internet video source, I would understand if there's pixelization on the video. But if it's internally pixelization from like a video device directly connected to my TV, I'm like, wait a minute, there's something not right here. And I'm going to go check it out. But if I've checked everything out and everything's A-okay, then I'm like, alright, so it's just the DVD or it's the quality of the video that I'm playing from my hard drive. But, more or less is, what do you want to live with? I know most women don't care for wires. Now, there may be some that aren't bothered by wires, but I know some women in my family that can't stand wires. Well, I don't care one way or the other. I'd rather have more wires, and I'd rather just clean around the wires than having to deal with poor performance on my computer system, my entertainment system. It's just whatever you want to put into, your system, whether you want a good running system or if you want an unreliable system. And that even goes for DVD-ROMs. Now, well, I'm not sure if you can see it. Well, probably now, there's a DVD-ROM I have up here on my shelf, and that is a external power supply. And I'll tell you what, it works a lot better than the self-powered drives. And I've looked at them, and I'm like, these things are cheap pieces of junk. Why would I want to buy something like that? And being here in a remote office, and what do I mean by remote office is that all of my computer equipment is in another room, so it's quiet in here to do video recording, video editing, to be able to talk on the phone to people. So I call this my remote office. I got a central office. So this particular drive is powered up by a power supply, but also has a USB hub which is connected through Ethernet that has its own power supply that's plugged into 120 volts. So when it gets downstairs, it will work. And I've never had a problem with the power supplied equipment. Now, I've had problems with power supplies themselves. When you replace them, that will fix a lot of problems with your DC equipment, whether it's your DVR or something, or your Android player, your web player. If you've got external web players, I do. I don't use the smart function in a TV. So anyways, that's another whole video about how to fix your expensive equipment. And a lot of the power supplies these days is just cheap, and they just throw it in there to get you going. If you're having a problem, I would buy another power supply and make sure that it's a overrated. And what I mean by overrated is that, and I'm not talking about the power. If your equipment says 12 volts DC, you need to have 12 volts DC. You can't use 5 volts. You can't, like that, for instance, you can't use 12 volts on a 5 volt equipment. It's not, it'll work, but you'll burn it up. But what I mean by overrated power supply is your wattage. The more watts you have on your power supply, the better your power supply will be, and the more reliable your power supply will be, and it won't poop out as quickly because it's not maxed out with whatever the equipment's taking off it. Well, that's a whole other video that I can get into, and someday that I'll talk about. But when you are deciding to buy an upgrade, whether it's to your computer or your entertainment system, stick with something that has a power supply over self-powered. I don't recommend self-powered equipment for anybody. The only, like I said, the only thing I recommend that's self-powered, that you can only get that's self-powered, is these flash sticks. And these work all the time, even on those equipment that computers that didn't work with that USB self-powered drive. These flash sticks work perfectly fine. So make your decision whether you want to spend more money on trying to fix your problem, or just spend the money and have it work the first time around. Anyhow, I'll see you the next time on another great video. Have a great day.